Hey everybody. Today I'm going to discuss some more of my background in how I got into product management. I've done a few videos on this before, but I want to revisit my experience, and I think I encourage others to do the same. I think it's important to always be practicing uh, how you're presenting your story. And for me, I have been immersed in this creative project for almost a year now, and it's been really tough on me mentally um, to make sure I can handle it along with pursuing my day to day career goals. So I'm going to go back to product management for this video, and I think my Instagram is going to do a lot more of my personal life blogging. Um, but I have quite a range of experience that I want to share um, with you and talk a bit about what it took me to get where I'm at and the how I think about the career of product management. It's a broad uh, category, and it gets confused with project management quite a bit, and so I have been at companies that have both functions, and I can speak a little more to those differences. But um, my first role was with Fictive. It's a on-demand hardware manufacturing platform. A lot of people in manufacturing, mechanical engineering, design engineering may know of it. It's comparable to Xometry or Proto Labs. What Fictive did uniquely is it provided a platform to upload your part specifications in the form of a CAD model, and then would provide pricing on the spot and reverse the quoting uh, process. So, what that does for the industry and manufacturers is it awards business with the payout estimate attached, and rather than requesting quote. So, many big companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, when they typically have a approved vendor list, but uh, when they're quoting with the manufacturer, it takes a lot of time and effort for the manufacturer to go through that process. And so what Fictive did was they said, "Here's a job all packaged up. Do you want it? Yes or no? Here's the payout." And we delivered that in the form of a web app for mobile and a text message. So the vendor would receive a text message with a link to the web platform, and they could see what we were requesting of them in terms of uh, the lead time demand. I think it was like 3, 5, 7 days for CNC machining, 1 or 2 days for 3D printing. At the time, they do a whole suite of processes now, but and then the vendor could spin around the model, the 3D model, and see all the details and think about the requirements for machining, or if it's 3D printing, additive. Um, then they would accept or reject the job. And I was the uh, I was hired to expand their capacity, which means uh, building a network of vendors. And I made over 5,000 phone calls to do so. It was right when I moved to San Francisco, so I was really nervous and didn't have, um, a lot of friends here. I took the leap from Boulder and didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be in tech. And so I took that adventure, and it was a lot of outbounding, a lot of I was the only one doing that, so I had quite a bit of ownership on how we qualified manufacturers and got them engaged. And so a, I had a unique perspective, and I saw how we often would onboard vendors and they wouldn't receive any jobs, or they would receive payouts that were not consistent with what their other customers were giving them. And at the time, when Fictive first got started, they coined themselves the Airbnb of manufacturing. And so the idea was to fill voids in machine time, capacity, idle machines, with this work, and we would spread this work across a distributed network of partners, as opposed to a proto labs, which manufactures all in house and they have their own equipment to do so. But the beauty in this model is that we could quickly onboard new capabilities because we were using existing partnerships and building new ones very quickly, and we were making use of existing infrastructure and capacity. What I noticed is this problem with getting vendors engaged. We often would send uh, the more difficult, higher paying work to our most trusted vendors, and did so manually. It wasn't fully automated in our scheduling models. And so there was a lot of choice, which means bias on the scheduling team. And that gave me a feeling of pain because I was the voice of the manufacturers. I spoke to them during onboarding and negotiated and told them, well, I was really selling the business and selling what we had to offer them. And as I onboarded manufacturers, I began thinking about capacity in a different way. And I actually came up with this term, reserved capacity, where it picks at the underlying model or the idea of Airbnb of manufacturing. And it says that manufacturers have idle machines, and they have these voids that they want to fill with work, but they're very choiceful in the type of work that they put on their machines, and it's not completely the work that leads to that decision. It's also the partnership and the potential of spend from their point of view, us being the customer. And so reserve capacity was this idea that vendors, if they thought there was a lot of potential in our relationship, then they would reserve capacity for us, and it would come out of thin air, which is more realistically how it works, and how they think about scheduling. Like, and that goes down to quality. So we wouldn't get good quality from our new manufacturers sometimes. And that wasn't because the manufacturers were bad at what they did, but from a binary thinking, or simple evaluation analysis, like just looking at numbers, it would lead you to believe that they were poor manufacturers. But if you dive deeper into the business, if you talk to them, if you understand their pain points and uh, the things that they're going through and how they receive business day to day, you'd find that they have that machining is a skilled labor, and it takes a lot of um, expertise to do something very well. So the manufacturers have an A team, a B team, and a C team. And if you're a new customer to them, or you're young and you're, an engineer in schooling, they are less inclined to give you their full time and attention and best skilled labor. So that's something that I observed, and then I developed this internal narrative for the team about this new terminology, and I piloted a project over the course of 6 months to prove out this concept and change our scheduling so that it would treat all vendors equally and then detract potential business or opportunity based on a more unbiased evaluation. And my counterpart did the evaluation, the performance model or scoring models. I had some ideas and contributions for that, but what I walked away with was getting buy-in by the engineering team on and the company and the leadership on changing our fundamental uh, models for how we distribute work. And so that was really powerful and exciting for me. I then got into product management, and the reason was I'm incredibly customer oriented. I'm very good at evaluating software and with attention to detail, and I have a design bias. I have a lot of product sense because I use the best technology available, and I'm curious. And so I thought product management was right for me because I was speaking to the PMs at Fictive, and I loved discussing problems with them and doing presentations uh, and really diving into these pain points and thinking about the way we scored our vendors and if there were biases involved, and that's really championing the customer. And for us, we had two sets of customers. We had the vendors and we had the design engineers who are ordering manufacturing of parts. So I think a great product manager is able to have this instinct, and it takes uh, lots of conversations with customers to really understand what your business does for them and the value you create. And there's also this component of like strategic objectives. And so the way I think of value is like it doesn't always come down to customer value. There's internal value. There's specific customer needs that the business has to meet, and that's set at the leadership level. So when allocating development resources, a founder at a startup needs to decide what goes towards the self-service product, um, and building retention versus what resources are reserved for this, more strategic, like tactical focus of, um, uh, building expertise around a specific customer need, landing and expanding an account, uh, growing a relationship that will have a return on investment associated with that. These are tactical, requirements to scale a startup. You need a good customer to get off the ground. And those decisions are made by business people often and not your engineering leads. And so the job of a product manager, where we come in, is we help to make those decisions on, like, allocating, um, resources towards problems. And so we really pick apart the problems and decide what's worth, um, what juice is worth the squeeze. So I think, problems are, it's funny how there's so many different components to product management, but if you're good at attacking problems, you can make a great product manager. It's about how you pick at those problems and how you form the dialogue and speak about the problems, and then how do you respond to those problems as a software business, like. And being design oriented really helps because you can help a designer, make decisions on, um, that are, uh, that help with, and being design oriented is really valuable as a product manager. If you have an engineering degree as well, then that's also valuable, because my experience having both a design training as well as product training and engineering background, I can speak to the engineering team and really understand the feasibility at a deeper level than most PMs. But at the same time, I can help, relay design intent to that team and help make quick decisions to preserve designer, time, because in on both sides, the engineering team wants to be focused on more long-term, uh, retention problems, and the designers need to be reserved for, uh, thinking about the the biggest problems to solve, but also um, the holistic usability of the product. And if you, like, a lot of startups right now um, are outsourcing design overseas, and so a startup might have 4 or 5 designers, overseas, and they treat it like engineering work, where, uh, you set a bunch of requirements, tell them to focus on a specific area, and then you stitch it together at the end and have engineering, fulfill it. But that doesn't always work well, because your design system becomes, too varied, and it's really important to have 1 or 2 designers that really own the entire, system, because they champion the customer in a way, and they there should be somebody who's the point on making sure there's consistency throughout the design system and how it's, implemented by engineering. And product does that too. Like managers will QA, especially in startups. Like I don't think this is the case for corporate roles, but I spent a lot of time doing QA work. Like when development finishes with a feature area, um, I have the knowledge from working with the designer because that was, a few weeks before, on what the intent was. And I don't need to waste the designer's time to ask if it's correct in the product. And so I'm in the staging environment testing a lot. And then if there's an issue, I write a Jira ticket for engineering or and really try to protect the time of our designers. And and so but I'm pretty uh, autonomous. I operate pretty autonomously when it comes to like being a an agile like design decision maker and get once you build trust with your designers, then you can help to make those decisions on um, what was implemented versus what was asked, and and request engineering look at something again if it doesn't behave the way it was intended. Uh, so that's the most enjoyable part of being a product manager, in my opinion. I love to be part of every step in the development cycle, like setting the objectives with leadership, deciding resource allocation, where what problems are the biggest to focus on, and then how do you break those problems down into you go into discovery mode. You decide what is the user journey, what's gonna move the needle on retention, and you decide the usability and the feature sets. And some of that's done without a designer input, but you want a designer to help with ideation and deciding what's possible. So that's why, you have that, I don't know what they call it. It's like a the discovery process. You cast a net real wide and then you narrow it, but then you go wide again and narrow it. But it's like and a lot of that gets into like the design theory, but I don't know too much on that part. But once you and being a PM with design skills, like if you have like sketching skills and the ability to draw, like I'm a creative at heart and I love to draw and I love to come up with um, uh, my own like sketches for how a platform should look and just sort of the dream, I guess. And founders really love that. And if I'm able to get buy-in from founders on a vision for a set of screens, then it actually helps the designer because it once the buy-in is won, then the designer can focus on exactly how that experience is rendered. And you can discuss with the designer what is a firm decision, like in this sketch, like what do we really want and what have we already agreed with leadership on, and what is free for creative um, uh, room for creativity on their side. And so I love doing that type of work. But then so going through the steps of the development cycle, once the designer comes up with exactly how that set of screens um, looks and behaves, then we have design reviews. And that's either, depending on the size of the team, you're either with, you have a few engineers in there to assess the feasibility of it. You have your decision makers, which could be your leadership team. And it's a lot of up managing. So if your decision makers are not design people, they have a blind spot, and they don't um, always know the best decision. Like, I remember at Sakari, I was reporting to the chief technology officer directly, and he is an amazing like technical mind, excellent at thinking about clean systems, and I also have some of that mindset. So I we really enjoyed having conversations about like just the pure system we were trying to build. Um, and but what the skill set that he didn't have is what is like heuristically a good decision for where features go. And designers will say you want to uh, like building a habit forming product, right? Building a a product that has features in specific areas and not overuse of the or over implementation of those features. So that was a key learning for me working with design was um, not overdoing and not over engineering. Like engineers can take a component and implement it somewhere else super easily, right? And it looks like a lot of, it looks like more work, but it's not for them. And so they love doing it. But when you make things extremely convenient for the user, a lot of times you um, you actually induce anxiety. You actually uh, like you clutter the UI and you make it harder for them to learn where to go to do specific tasks. And so the best products really have that separation. They have and they think in terms of like user stories. Like um, this specific user persona has this job to be done, and that job is done here. It's not done here, 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 and here. Uh, so that's really important, and that's something that a lot of startups don't get right. Is they will overbuild in multiple locations, and then the sense of um, like maturity of the product is hurt by that. Like it doesn't feel like a designer's on the team, and users want to have that experience that they're familiar with in different products. Like they want to go through a nice onboarding and hand holding and have that start to build trust and know that you as the uh, as their software partner, if it's a B2B application, that you're constantly evolving your design assets, your approach to problem solving, and that your interface is continuously updating, uh, and being responsive, like to bug tickets. That's another thing. So when it comes to bugs, we would have escalation meetings like twice a week, and I would talk to the head of support, and we'd make decisions on what should be escalated, meaning um, higher priority of a bug ticket, which means engineering will address it sooner. Engineering capacity is finite, so they define sprints, and a sprint schedule may be 1 week, 2 weeks, or they're on a continuous development cycle where there's not, it's more of a loose agile approach. They don't do they might have a release once a day, or throughout the day they're constantly pushing things when they get done, which is perfectly fine, but it makes it harder for more systematic QA in terms of qualitative QA, not quantitative. So like there's automated testing, but there's also like qualitative, making sure that this checks off all the success criteria that I, the product manager, defined in the product requirements document. Um, so I found it helpful to have like a QA database where I could track these things, because you don't want to be caught saying that something has been tested when it hasn't, and you're preventing errors in the production product, and you're the final sign off if you're the product manager, uh, or at least I was. So, what else? Yeah, so I think maybe now I'll talk a little bit about like pursuing this creative project, like what I was thinking. I um, have some background in advertising, ad creative, um, which is the production of display ads. So in advertising, are there's a problem of like ad units, and every platform has its own requirements for the customization of the ad, the placement, the aspect ratio, the multimedia capabilities of it. Like we had at responsive ads, we had display ads that on Condé Nast articles that would, like if it was like a Nissan car and it was the interior, and you could, it's sort of a Google Street view type of experience where you can pan around because it's a 3D um, experience, and you could click on different pins and see the features within the interior of the car. Uh, that type of ad experience doesn't scale to different platforms, right? Like Facebook ads don't support things like that. But what was the biggest problem at responsive ads was defining the the ability to optimize creative for different platforms and for different, like having variants. And so I worked on the variant system, and I worked on um, versioning capabilities and did mocks for that. And I brought a lot of experience from learning Webflow and the way they have backups and restore. And I did that at Sakari as well. I helped them with their workflow automation tool, and some of the methodology to have different states of a workflow. And so on this creative project, I got really excited about animation tools in Instagram, and so I I thought, well, the value that Instagram provides me is this set of animation um, capabilities, and it's in design language. Think of it as like raw materials or atoms, molecules type of value. It's like I can build with this sandbox something that's highly unique. And I knew that no one else was going to do, or I would have very small competition. And I have a competitive attitude. So I think a lot about competitive intelligence and trying to beat the other players in a specific market, and really understanding their customer base and why they're successful, and what edge does my strategy have against them, and how can I acquire customers or help them transition to, and provide enough value to do that. So I thought about, okay, here's the amount of competition in Instagram. Like, there's influencers who are on camera every day, and the fact that they do reels every day, um, that's an advantage for them. They get prioritized in the algorithm because they're always on camera. Um, I wanted to be different. I wanted to do something that was heavy on the design and providing value, and I wanted it to be um, more technical, higher level of effort, and because that's where I really shine, and that's my advantage is I have advertising background, I have design background, and uh, I wouldn't say I'm musically like inclined, or I don't have a lot of skills in creating music, but I have animation skills, and I understood the animation timeline and how it worked and where they were going with it, because I came from like responsive ads. We had our own animation timeline. Webflow has an animation timeline, so I was real familiar with that. Uh, and it was quite painful when I got started because there were bugs and it was a new release, and there's still bugs that haven't been addressed. But when you're Instagram, your focus is not the advanced user, because most of your audience, or your customers are the average like day-to-day influencer, and um, and so they, on their reels and their animation, everything, like, you look at the how they advertise that stuff and you don't see anything about music. And but I thought that would be a huge value to add, is there's already lyric videos on YouTube, but the lyric videos are not highly custom. They're not, they don't have a lot of like deep emotion with the imagery. And so, and I wanted to have a single style that I chose. And that decision um, was intended to get remembered. So if I'm the only one doing animation with music, uh, as Instagram Reels, with a layered paper background imagery, uh, it's not going to take long for people to remember it if I'm doing it at a high velocity. Now, it takes me about, I'd say about 7 to 8 hours to get each one done. I'm working on um, speeding that up, but it really bleeds into my personal life. Like yesterday, I was at Hunky Jesus at Dolores, and it I had to spend 20 to 30 minutes working on a reel during that time. Um, and I also met a creator who got to 200,000 followers on TikTok, and I asked him if he made any money off it, and he said no. And it's so interesting to me how the accounts with the most followers, like, when do they start to monetize? Like, I don't know the answer to that question. I have not monetized at all. And what I'm doing is I'm experimenting and testing a gray area. I'm I'm setting an example for what creative is, to me, and what being an influencer means to me. And it's so my focus is using my skills that I've acquired through advertising and design and product management to launch this platform for um, visual radio, is what I coined it. And so there were a lot of decisions I made along the way about, like, should I have all of my work viewable at the same time? And I thought about the idea of a radio and how, well, radios don't really own the material. They cycle through different um, songs, right? And so I think it would be really fun if in the showcase, and when you go to clouddancer.io, you see 8 of my newest creatives, but then there's this recycled area, and each time you come back, that changes, and so that becomes like a method of catalyze, or it helps to catalyze and bring users back to the platform, because they're curious about the new one. Uh, but if it's moving at a slow pace because it's a slow art narrative, then it also should have some other, like, residual value that it provides. And that's really the main value now. Like, I didn't come up with that idea until pretty late into it. I After I built the platform, but it uh, was also to send a message to Instagram that, like, me immersing or spending so much time doing this work and not being um, provided compensation by the views of my content, and lack of followers, but who cares about followers? It's not really status. I think status is the views, and I've had over 100,000 views of my profile in Instagram, my Essentially account, and so my brand is pretty well known, or that's my evaluation right now. So it was a trade off of being known, getting, as and establishing myself as a creative person, and being able to uh, take control of my social channels and build my character in the process. And because like people with engineering background, they often get bucketed as, or labeled as, non-creative people. And I am a generalist, so I do all the things, but I am not as technical as an engineer. I can use AI to build features. I can learn pretty technical concepts and help to relay those and discuss prioritization. But no, I'm not an expert at AI. Uh, I'm really strong at evaluating opportunities, having an entrepreneurial mindset, and being a joy to work with. Um, but so going back to the decisions I made, like, the hardest thing for me is determining the right speed. Like, I was doing one per day, and then eventually, like, when I started out, the AI illustrator and ChatGPT was far less capable. And I've been on this journey using it every day, seeing how it's evolved, and it's gotten much better. But if I just plug something in and then create the illustration all with AI and don't spend much time on it, I get this personal, like, sour feeling. Like, I don't like it as much. And so almost always I will put extra effort into the illustration, and whether it's the details or fixing issues. Sometimes I leave issues on purpose because it's funny, it's humorous, but it's also making a statement that art doesn't have a right or wrong. It's If it makes the person feel good, then I've done my job. Um, but the more I speed things up, the less happy I am with the output. But at the same time, I can't compromise quality, but I need to speed up. And but if I go too quickly, then I look like I'm stealing art. So there's all these different, like, constraints, and, like, as a product person, you just have to define what it is you're after and what you're trying to do and what is your craft, right? And that's not really product management. That's more of, like, um, I'd say brand development. It's more of, like, uh, identity, like understanding what is my niche. But the product management side comes in where it's like, does this give me an advantage? Like, because I'm the only one doing this type of work, I'm gonna be successful. So that's, like, the hypothesis associated with it. Yeah, so that's about it. I'm going to sign off now. I'll continue to make videos, both personal for my blog, but also for work purposes and hiring and product management. So thanks for watching. Bye.